May God be with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to God.
Jesus said to the disciples, "Fear not, little flock, for it has pleased your Abba to give you the kingdom. Sell what you own and give the money to poorer people. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, treasures that will not fail you in heaven, that thieves cannot steal and moths cannot destroy. For wherever your treasure is, that is where your heart will be. Be dressed and ready, and keep your lamps lit. Be like the household staff awaiting the owner's return from a wedding, so that when the owner arrives and knocks, you will open the door without delay. It will go well with those staff members whom the owner finds wide awake upon returning. I tell you the absolute truth. The owner will put on an apron, seat them at table, and proceed to wait on them. Should the owner happen to come at midnight or before sunrise and find them prepared, it will go well with them. Understand this, no homeowner who knew when a thief was coming would have let the thief break in. So be on guard. The promised one will come when you least expected." Peter said, "Do you intend this parable just for us, teacher, or do you mean it for everyone?" Jesus said, "It is a faithful and far-sighted steward that the owner leaves to supervise the staff and give them their rations at the proper time. Happy the steward whom the owner, upon returning, finds busy. The truth is, the owner will put the steward in charge of the entire estate. But let us say the steward thinks the owner is slow in returning and begins to abuse the other staff members, eating and drinking and getting drunk. When the owner returns unexpectedly, the steward will be severely punished and ranked among those undeserving of trust. The staff members who knew the owner's wishes but did not work to fulfill them will get a severe punishment, whereas the one who did not know them, even though deserving of a severe punishment, will get off with a milder correction. From these who have been given much, much will be required. From those who have been entrusted much, much will be asked. The good news of salvation. Good evening, and it's good to be here in person. We start tonight's gospel with a guarantee and an assurance. Fear not, little flock, for it has pleased your Abba to give you the kingdom. If we look at a few sentences before our gospel reading, Jesus says, stop worrying. Both of these are both comforting and disturbing. How often have we been told to stop worrying? Stop worrying, you will get that job or that apartment or whatever you need to function in modern society. Jesus says, fear not, do not be afraid. We are told to be dressed and ready, or essentially to wait. The first parable tonight is about the household staff waiting for the owner's return from a wedding, which could last for more than a day. Being ready and alert in the darkest hours of the night couldn't have been any easier than if it was today, especially if you had to be dressed and ready. When I think of the household staff in that reading, it reminds me of Downton Abbey, where the servants waited and were ready for the arrival of the Lord and Lady Grantham at any time. But in their waiting, they had plenty to do. In our lives, we spend a lot of time waiting, whether it's for a doctor's appointment or another professional. Maybe you're the type that likes to get to an appointment early. We all wait while in the subway or a car service gets us to the next location. Or even if you have a car, you have to wait for the light to turn green or wait in traffic. Many here in church and on Zoom waited for the liturgy to begin tonight. All of us are waiting for something. When the Gospel of Luke was written, the early Christians were waiting for the imminent return of Jesus. They had expected him to return in the not too distant future. Many of the earlier believers had become restless and hoping that the coming of the kingdom was at hand. We have waited over 2,000 years, though we've come to realize that Jesus is present here today in the Eucharist, in our communities, and through the gifts of grace we encounter on a daily basis. If the owner found the household staff ready, the owner would put on an apron, seat them at table, and proceed to wait on the household staff. How great, generous, and paradoxical. We see this time and time again in Luke's gospel. We remember another example when Jesus did this, where he insists on washing the disciples' feet at the Last Supper. So what are you waiting for? Every time I hear that line, I get anxious. Is there something I should be doing? Usually the person asking that question wants us to do something. And clearly, the second part of tonight's gospel indicates that the concept of being busy while waiting and its rewards, as well as the punishment for those not being busy and ready for the owner's return. When the owner returns and finds the steward busy, that steward will get more responsibility. Well, there are days where we might say, why would we want more responsibility? I think the parable left out the compensation package and the fringe benefits that go along with the greater responsibility, but I digress. The steward supervising the staff did so by making sure they were fed and their needs were taken care of. The steward was not about being greedy, selfish, looking out only for themselves. The owner saw how the steward treated the staff and wanted to reward the steward by giving more responsibility. The steward was not just waiting for the owner to return. She was busy doing what was needed to get done to run the operation. The same thing we could apply from the household to our businesses, organizations, or any other social group that exists. In other words, we are looking at community as a household. Pope Francis states in Fratelli Tutti, human beings are made so they cannot live, develop, and find fulfillment except in the sincere gift of self to others, nor can they fully know themselves apart from an encounter with other persons. By using our gifts, which is the gift of being of self, we interact with others, sharing and exchanging, building community by giving of our time, talent, and treasure, living out the kingdom of God here on earth. What are we living for? The world, our nation, our states, our cities, our communities have lots of problems. But we can also see a lot of good in all of that. And there is so much to do to serve others who need our help, whether it be spiritually, socially, politically. And while we may be surviving or comfortable, there are many who are not. There are some serious issues facing our community. Two come to mind immediately: reproductive health and self-affirming care for transgender people. In the past month, since Roe v. Wade was struck down, women's lives have been jeopardized. Women and doctors and nurses, have been put into impossible situations to either give proper medical care or face serious jail time. This should not be happening in a pluralistic, industrial country. We have transgender children and adults who in some states will not get the necessary medical care that they need. Those states would rather see them gone out of existence. And one of the crazy reasons I've heard is that there is some misguided notion that being transgender is a new trend or fad. Well, one of the earliest recorded transgender persons comes from ancient Egypt. That is quite a long trend. Transgender people must be given the respect. And as a side, August is Transgender History Month. So spend a moment or two while waiting to look up some historical transgender figures on the Googles. We, as members of the LGBTQIA community, must do what we can to fix these issues and do our part. As Jesus said, from those who have been given much, much will be required. From those who have been entrusted much, much will be asked. It is time to roll up our sleeves, because if we cannot or will not do the work, who will? Just to be clear, there are many other inequalities, whether in law or wages, that need to be tackled as well. As we wait and keep busy for the return of Jesus, what are we waiting for? And more importantly, what are we living for?